From Washington, D.C., Special Advisor to the President of J Street, Alan Elsner, joins me. Alan, great to have you with us.
Hi, nice to be here.
And also with me in studio, Israel writer and activist Hen Mazzig. Alan, we'll get to you in a minute. I first want to speak to you, Hen. You take issue with what Portman's done here.
It's not about the statement. It's not about the merits of what she is saying. It's about how she's doing it. Giving two examples of people that were critical of Israel and yet made their voice heard in a right way. When Helen Mirren was invited to the Genesis Prize back in 2016, while she's very critical of the Prime Minister's actions, she still arrived and she refused to take pictures with him or to participate in dinner with him, but she still arrived and made her statement. Grossman is an Israeli author that just won an Israel Prize, and in a ceremony with Benjamin Netanyahu and Natalie Bennett, right-wing politicians that he's very critical of, still arrived, still shook their hands day after he was participating in a...
Sure, but I'm failing to see what you're saying the consequences of her actions are.
I think the consequences are very clear. Just moments after she posted the Instagram post, BDS activists got all over the world, took to social media to say, here, she's boycotting Israel. Even Israelis boycotting Israel. So while, you know, I have differences with J Street, for instance, because they're not Israelis and they're pushing a foreign agenda on Israel. But with her, I have an issue because she's an Israeli just like me. We're both Israelis. And when we have criticism, we need to bring it here and we need to voice our criticism. Using tactic that is so similar to boycott. It's just like saying, you know, I'm going to eat a burger, but I'm not eating unhealthy. I'm just eating a burger. Well, you're eating a burger. That's the issue.
All right, Alan, I want to bring your perspective into the conversation. What's your response to what Hen had to say?
First of all, I'd like to say that I am also Israeli and served in the IDF, just to put that on the record. And we have many Israelis in J Street, so that should be understood. I am not here as a spokesperson for Natalie Portman, but I do think that the debate is it needs to be recalibrated a little bit. If I were Benjamin Netanyahu and if I were an Israeli, I would take this as a terrible warning sign that he is losing the support of many American Jews. And I think that they need to do some what's called cheshbon nefesh, look into their souls and try and figure out what is it about our behavior that is alienating people so much, that is so disturbing to them that emotionally she could not bring herself to make this trip. I think that the debate about whether she should or shouldn't have come is really beside the point. She's a private individual and she was responding to her own emotional feelings in her own way, and we fully support that, of course.
All right, Hen, your response to that, why must Portman be forced to stand next to a leader she doesn't approve of? Would you be, I suppose, so critical of her behaviour if she'd done this with another leader that wasn't the Prime Minister of Israel?
I mean, my criticism is a legitimate criticism, just like the other side would say that her criticism is legitimate. I'm criticizing her for criticism, so I think that's okay. But the second part is that my problem is that this is being used by left-wing people with left-wing agenda to say this is Bibi and we are blaming Netanyahu and it's a politician's fault. And then it's used by right-wing politicians and people with right-wing agenda to say, look at the way the left is behaving. It's very divisive. It's not helping anyone. It would be much better if she would come here and get on the stage and say, you know what, I'm taking this $2 million and I'm donating them to B'Tselem, to whatever organization she believes in, and that would be much stronger of a statement than doing something as cowardly as sending her spokesperson and saying the spokesperson doesn't speak for her, and then claiming that Israel is conducting atrocities, saying that she's not joining the full BDS movement, which is, by the way, something that I do commend. She did say that she's not joining the BDS movement, but she said, I'm going to boycott the entire nation. So the whole thing, the problem was the way it was conducted and the way that she tried to voice her opinions.
What is the discourse being discussed around, I suppose, Israel's image and the sentiment towards Israel among members of J Street, for example?
Well, the accusation that what Natalie Portman feels and what she has done is bordering on anti-Semitism is not just ridiculous and absurd and deeply offensive. But what worries me is it seems to be part of a kind of knee-jerk pattern that the Israeli government has when confronted with dissent, with views that it disagrees with. And, you know, we're talking about how upset some people in Israel have been. Well, people in the United States, American Jews specifically, have been very upset when the Prime Minister reneges on a deal to allow egalitarian press space at the Western Wall, when he signs an agreement which we praised to solve the dilemma and the plight of the African migrants, and then a few hours later turns around and rips up the same agreement, when he and of course, you know, what's happening on the Gaza border and that site. So people, there are high emotions on both sides, but I think it behooves us, and we would all be better off if we moderated our rhetoric and just concentrated on voicing criticism to the extent that we feel it on the actions that are being taken, without characterizing them with very extreme phrases like fascist, anti-Semite, Jew hater, capo, and the like. These just heat up the dialogue and make it, in fact, impossible to have a dialogue. So I think that a minister who is an official person, as opposed to Natalie Portman, who of course is a private citizen, has a higher responsibility to be measured and to be moderate and to think about what they're saying before throwing around very, very offensive terms like anti-Semitism.
Right. We'll move into studio and get your response, Hen, because of course this conversation seems to be barreling ahead without, I suppose, paying attention to what Natalie Portman has actually said. She said that she supports Israel. She does not support the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, and she simply does not support the leadership. So what's the problem with that when we're listening to Alan's point about the divisiveness of conversations like this?
Right. I don't think there's any problem with any Israeli voicing his opinions. To say that Natalie Portman is a private citizen, that's a bit stretching it. I mean, she's a public figure. She's an Oscar winner. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she knows that there's consequences for everything she's saying. And that's the issue here. I mean, people are looking up to her. Young people are looking up to her, and she prides herself on being Israeli. She prides herself in being.
Can you outline for me what those consequences are that you just pointed to?
But the consequences are that young people might look at it, and you know what, young people do look at it and look on Twitter and look on Facebook and see that BDS activists are claiming a victory and saying that Natalie Portman has boycotted Israel, that Natalie Portman has...
But she just clarified that she hasn't. So I'm not understanding why people are continuing to talk about this, right, not paying attention to what she said.
I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying that. And again, I said from the beginning, I think she's a great... I think there's no problem with her criticism, and I think that the comments that were made about her are offensive and shouldn't have been made. But I think that her actions have caused us a terrible price. I mean, the fact that BDS is now using it as a victory, the fact that it's all over the news, all the way from the Hollywood Reporter down to the New York Times, everyone are talking about it and saying that this is that she's boycotted Israel, that she's snubbed Israel, and that's the news that are coming out of it. So BDS is not actually about, and I said it in my letter to her today on the Jerusalem Post, that it's not about economic boycott. It's not about actually bringing down the Israeli economy. They know that they can do it. It's about public affair battle, and that's another victory. And I wish that she wouldn't hand it neither to the left, neither to the right, and neither to organizations like J Street that promote foreign agenda that they believe in. Sure. I think she should have come here, and that's the way to do it in Israel. Is we discuss things here.
Well, creating division, I suppose, is never the goal, but of course, discourse is always important. Hen, we really appreciate that insight and to have you with us in studio. Alan, to you in Washington, D.C., thank you for joining us here on Perspectives.